Now, you were saying know why Emily is named Emily and Beatrice. So when you direct, do you look up every name of every character and find the correlation?
That's not how you know why her name is Emily. You don't say, well, Emily comes from Old English and before that French, meaning the flower of the garden or whatever. No. No, it's like this. I'm going to have you read later on a play called Child's Play. In it, there's a character whose name is Jerome. There's also a character whose name is Eddie, I think. What difference is there between Jerome and Eddie?
Well, they feel different. Jerome is sort of elongated, and Eddie is, short and fast. Yeah. So they, the qualities of the names themselves.
Right.
Jerome often is, long for Jerry, and Eddie short for Edward. And Jerome, and names sometimes might denote an ethnicity.
Right.
Sometimes one name suggests one type over another. Jerome I associate with being Jewish, right or wrong, I don't know. But
good. I don't know if it was Ezekiel, it would be pretty readily Jewish. I don't know that Jerome would be, but good.
Right.
But again, everything in drama is about what must be. Jerome is a more elevated word than Eddie. If Jerome, there was a movie called The Hustler.
Paul Newman.
And Paul Newman plays Fast Eddie. Mm-hmm. How would it have been if you were playing Fast Jerome?
Certainly would change it, wouldn't it?
It wouldn't have the same feel.
No.
That's Fast Eddie so-and-so playing Minnesota Fats instead of playing Ezekiel McBean.
Because Eddie, again, is a nickname for Edward, whereas Jerome is the proper name, right? It's not a nickname for anything.
No. So it has an elevated quality to it. So an author who can name anybody anything, if they name him Jerome, that's a clue about that person. And there will be something in the play that he is best named Jerome for. Now, early on in medieval, if you want to call it theater, play giving, there were characters called good deeds. And he went around doing good deeds. And another called envy, who was envious. So it was a blatant one-to-one connection. This is what my character means, and this is the way I'll behave. That's actually still done, but it's a much more sophisticated level. If you have Maggie the cat, it's not the same as Evangeline the cat. You wouldn't have Evangeline the cat.
So when you say it's not...
You might have Evangeline the lioness. But Evangeline the lioness now makes us think of a woman in a play who is in the 14th century England and who now becomes queen because the men in the lineage were killed off. So now Evangeline the lioness is not, you don't plug her into a Tennessee Williams play called Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Lioness on a Hot Tin Roof. So these names, although they're not blatantly good deeds, they are still representative of things about that character that provide the resonance in the play necessary to make the final, if you want to call it theme, apparent to the audience.
So when you say it's not that you're looking up the origin of the name, it's just that you're making a connection between the name and what you read about the character, right?
You make a connection between this name and this character's function as an element in the play to bring the final message home.
You have to really look at the characters and their history and their psychological motivations based on that history, and really, for that particular character, what is their truth in interpreting that character. Nothing at face value, but really understanding the character, not just the surface. Oh, this is a painter, or this is but what is it that shapes their motivation? And, really studying that. I think that's where psychology is important to know.
Right. Depends on what psychology. But basically, well, let me deal with it this way. Most people who you hear talk about character do not differentiate character appropriately. They say, the guy was about to shoot me, so my character was frightened. That is confusing situation with character. Anybody would be frightened if they're about to be shot. That's not an element of character. You have to make sure when you're dealing with character that you can tell the difference between what happens as an element of character or what happens as an element of situation. Plot is a terminology that I would encourage you not to think of, because it says subconsciously often, plot says the play, the elements of the play that have to happen, all the little incidents. The situation is a human way of looking at it. What are the people going through? What's happening to them? So I would encourage you to be careful of using what's called stage terminology. It begins to be jargon. It means people talk about plot. They don't even know what a plot is, but they think they do because they think they know what a plot is. Jargon is always language which is used as shorthand, but it assumes recognition of meaning, but that assumption is not always correct. The human situation is, what is this person doing? Now, the character is, what is this person doing different from what most people would do? You say a pretty girl comes in, a young guy is aroused by her. His character isn't aroused by her. Every young boy who's straight or bi would be responding to her, and many who think they're gay, whose most of their own sexual experience has been gay, would still respond to her. Perhaps not in the same way. Some wouldn't respond to her.
Yeah.
But if you don't respond to her, it's an element of character. If you respond to her for her vivacity, but not her sexuality, you are a character different from guys in general. Now, say you're straight. Say it's not a matter of sexuality. You're straight, you like women, but these ones who are always vivacious are a pain in the ass because they're always out for something, you think. It's always a manipulative thing. That's an element of your character. Something has happened to cause you to feel that way in relation to that stimulus. And it's not the way people generally feel. So, situation is what is happening. Character is how does what is happening affect this person?
Right.
Because it's not a character, it's a person that's being represented. How does it affect this person differently from the norm?
And is their character determined by the sum of their experiences?
Always.
In life, you could argue that it's genetics too, but in the theater, it's...
No, in life I would argue against the people who say it's genetics. Genetics do things that are category-wide. In other words, men tend to be dominant and aggressive in relation to trying to achieve things. There are probably genetic markers that encourage that behavior. Men will, biologically speaking, the future of a man's bloodline is determined by how wide he spreads his seed. Why do men want to screw 50 women all the time, and women only want to stay with one man? I think there are probably genetic markers that have to do with that. Because the nature of the male is to have, biologically, is to have his seed be able to go forward. And for that, the more recipients of his seed there are, the more chances that his bloodline will flourish in the future.
So you're saying that that is in the gene through evolution?
Yeah, I surmise that it is.
Yeah.
It's my assertion that it probably is. So I think, as I say, that that's a biologically produced, and if biologically produced, it would be through genetics, element of a man's behavior. It's interesting, I've come to believe in the last 10 years that push for revenge is a genetically encouraged behavior because it goes across all cultures. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth business. It goes across all cultures through all history. And so from that, I think it is probably a animal trait and an earlier animal genetic marker that is still in the human sense.
But would you say if you had two brothers, and one is, they have the same essential environment, one is prone to be, kind of take everything as it comes, the other brother is, hyper and tense and maybe even prone to violence, would you say that could be genetic?
No, I would think that's from their life experience.
So although growing up in the same house, that they would have somehow experienced different experiences, and one making the other one hyper and tense, and the other one calm.
They may have even experienced the same experiences, but since they're different beings, they would have experienced them differently.
Different sensitivities, sensibilities.
Right.
But then
different sensibilities, I also think, is a genetic reality.
A genetic reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That somebody's more sensitive to a particular than
it's
someone
in their
else.
genes. Yeah.
A child can be reprimanded and think, fuck you, I'll do it. But another child, not even very reprimanded, nonetheless feels totally attacked, feels like somebody has stuck a knife through them. Although the reprimand was very mild, they feel really hurt. They feel really persecuted by that experience. So these things are part of the sensibility of a character. But I think probably the genetic things are more malleable to training. And by training, I just mean what experiences the person goes through in life. But the basic thing that I want to talk about for the point of view of director, for the purposes at hand, that when your, quote, character, unquote, does something, you have to be able to distinguish whether he's doing that as an element of the situation, which means everybody would do that, or an element of the character, which means this is how this individual responds to that, which is different from other people. Because if it's out of character that he responds this way, then you have to deal with the reality that certain things that changes someone's character do not change the character only in relation to one situation. In other words, if something has happened to make someone a miser, he will be just as stingy in his compliments to someone as he is in giving them money. He will be just as stingy in giving his time to someone as he would giving his valuables of other kinds. Stingy goes across when it's a character trait. Anybody who wouldn't give this to that person at that moment is not stingy necessarily, because that's what the circumstance. I just got paid. I have 3 children at home. Didn't eat last night because we ran out of money for my last paycheck. If I don't give $20 to somebody on the street who says, I'm homeless, I want it, that's not stingy. I have to go home and do the things that I have to do, make sure my kids eat. But a man who is rich, has everything under the sun, and doesn't want this filthy person even talking to him, that's a miserly response. So, in dealing with character and so forth, you have to make sure what happens because of character, or does it happen because of the situation. Generally speaking, the fact, it's been my mode of teaching always, I don't know why. My teaching is always informational and sometimes supportive, but generally it's only supportive as a reinforcement of the information. I don't care whether the students like me. I don't think, gee, am I teaching them well? I'm only concerned about one thing. I'm giving them the information. I don't have any other axes to grind. I'm not trying to show off how much I know. I'm trying to keep little things from them. The end result is that from a teaching point of view, I've never had any problems. People believe me. They believe in me because they see I don't have any agenda. I'm just showing them things. I'm just trying to guide them along the path, not trying to get something from them as we go or show off for them as we go, I'm just trying to give them the information. That's the way I direct, by the way. I've never had any ego battle with an actor ever.
Really?
No, because I always deal with them in relation to what the play demands.
Sometimes you just get an egomaniac that
No,
you're working with.
No, the thing is, that person wants just to be good. And when I show him we'll talk about this when we talk about when you take somebody else through a script interpretation, how you do that. But I don't tell him anything. I lead them to discover it themselves. And when they discover it themselves, then it's their discovery, not mine. So there's no ego fight. My ego telling your ego to do what my ego wants your ego to do. So first of all, people recognize that I'm not on any ego trips, or I'm not trying to do anything but be informational. And then secondly, when I deal with certain things, I deal with it in a way that my ego also doesn't. I do a procedure that makes sure that my ego and their ego don't get involved with it. My ego's not going to, because to me, that's not what any of this is about. But an actor's may. So then I deal with them in a way to take it out of their ego, or for them not to believe that it's my ego trying to make their ego do something. I deal with them in a way that their ego decides it. But it's just that it's the right thing instead of the wrong thing. But we'll talk about that as
That's very interesting, yeah. It's very interesting.